Today, I'm going to explain a war drama movie called War Horse. In 1914, a local boy from Devon named Albert Narracos watches his neighbor's horse give birth to a foal. He is left completely mesmerized as the recently born animal struggles to get up to its feet. Mesmerized and scarred for life. As time passes by, Albert grows up and so does his fascination with the foal. He regularly visits his neighbor Mooney's farm and tries to form a bond with it. However, in a matter of a few years, the foal grows into a healthy Bay Irish colt, a breed mostly used in show jumping. Mooney takes several of his animals, including the horses, to the local open-air market. He enlists the colt in an auction, hoping to make some money for his family. Meanwhile, Albert's alcoholic father Ted also attends the auction with several of his friends. He is currently looking for a farming horse that can plow the stony sections of his land. But when he sees Mooney's colt, he is instantly enamored by it. His friends remind him that he needs a workhorse and not a show animal. Nonetheless, when the auction starts, Ted immediately bids for the Bay Irish colt. His landlord, Mr. Lyons, is also present there with his son David and has his eyes set on the same horse. The landlord then enters the auction and soon a bidding war breaks out. Ted, who is an extremely proud man, refuses to back down and keeps upping the bid. He eventually ends up buying the colt for 30 guineas, an extremely high price for that era. Guinea pigs were expensive after all. This leaves him with very little money to continue his livelihood. Meanwhile, Mr. Lyons is enraged that he ended up on the losing side, so he reminds Ted that his rent is due in a few weeks' time. Following this, Ted arrives home with the lean and gorgeous-looking horse. His wife Rosie is disappointed, knowing that they needed an animal for farm work instead of a young colt. Ted tells her everything that happened at the auction and how he outbid their landlord, but this makes Rosie even angrier, and she questions how they will pay their rent now. On the other hand, their son Albert is more than thrilled to see the animal. This is the same horse that he had been fascinated with since childhood. He begs his mother to let them keep it, and even promises that he will train the horse to help in the farm. After much insistence, Rosie eventually allows him to keep it, hoping that her son can undo the damage his father has done. In the following weeks, Albert remains steadfast in his decision to train the colt. He names it Joey and spends several hours each day working with it. Albert and his best friend Andrew even teach the horse to rush towards them when they hoot like an owl. The horse has been trained to kill owls, but the boys don't know that. However, things begin to go bad when Mr. Lyons arrives at the Narracot household a few days later. It is revealed that Ted had previously taken a loan from Lyons and is currently short on money. Ted assures that he will repay the full amount once they plow their land and finish harvesting their crops, but Lyons laughs at this suggestion, saying that the fancy horse he bought is useless on farmland. To humiliate the Narracots further, he proposes a deal. If they can get the horse to plow their fields, Neil will give them an extension for their loan repayment, but if the full debt is not paid by October, he will take their house, farms, as well as the horse. Following this, a desperate Ted gets to the barn and tries to put a collar on Joey. He struggles to do so, and the horse pushes him off in irritation. Albert also arrives in the barn and quickly calms his horse down. The young boy promises his father that he'll teach Joey how to plow their land. As the days pass by, Albert manages to gain Joey's trust and successfully puts a collar on him. He regularly takes Joey to the fields, trying to teach the animal how to plow. One such afternoon, Mr. Lyons and several villagers arrive to watch Albert's progress. The young boy, feeling the pressure, grabs a whip and hits the ground in a desperate attempt to get his horse moving, but this scares the animal and it bolts forward, dragging the youngster along the ground. Albert remains steadfast and keeps up his hard work, but to no avail. Soon, the rain starts pouring and Mr. Lyons gleefully announces that Ted has lost the deal. Albert, however, notices that the rain has made the ground softer and encourages his horse to continue. He finally manages to start plowing the field and the gathered villagers cheer for him. As a result, Mr. Lyons is forced to accept his loss and begrudgingly agrees to give the Narracots further time to repay the debt. Following this, Rosie and Albert have a conversation in the barn, where the latter expresses his frustrations towards his dad. He blames his father's short temper and alcohol addiction for landing them in this mess. Hearing this, Rosie tells her son about Ted's past, a subject that he rarely discusses. She says that Ted doesn't limp because he is mostly drunk, rather because he has a wartime injury. Rosie then shows Albert his father's medals from the Second Boer War in South Africa, where he served as a sergeant with the Imperial Yeomanry. He was severely wounded in action and received the Distinguished Distinguished Conduct Medal for bravery under fire, giving Albert his father's regimental pennant. Rosie adds that Ted is not proud of what he did during the war. He later threw the flag and medals away, though Rosie saved them and kept them hidden. After learning all of this, Albert comes out of the barn with a newfound respect for his father. He keeps the pennant and watches on as Ted plants seeds in the freshly plowed land. However, things take a turn for the worse as a few weeks later, a heavy storm arrives over Devon. Ted wakes up the next morning only to find that their crops have been utterly destroyed by the rain. He now has no option but to sell Joey and repay Lyons with the money. The following day, Albert is in the village's market when a soldier arrives on a motorbike. He stops his vehicle in the middle of the market square and asks everyone to gather around. The soldier then announces that the government has declared war against Germany. Shortly afterwards, Albert rushes home with this news, only to find his mother sobbing in the kitchen. He asks where his father is, but Rosie doesn't utter a word. The youngster then rushes to the barn and finds that Joey is nowhere to be seen. Following this, he runs back to the market and discovers that his father has sold Joey to Captain James Nichols of the British Army. Albert desperately tries to enlist in the army so he can be near his horse, but is rejected for being too young. Albert then follows Joey and ties his father's pennant around the horse's bridle. He promises to find Joey and bring it back home. Meanwhile, the horse is taken to the military stable and kept alongside Top Thorn, a majestic black horse that belongs to a high-ranking official, Major Jamie. Joey is trained alongside Top Thorn for his military role, and the two horses become close friends. Captain Nichols, meanwhile, draws several sketches of Joey and mails them to Albert, hoping to ease the young boy's worries. As the First World War rolls in, the two horses are deployed to France under the command of Major Jamie. The English soldiers maneuver towards the battlefield, hoping to catch the German force in a surprise attack. All the soldiers, including Captain Nichols, charge into battle on their horses. Things work out for the British Army initially, as they do catch the enemy off guard, but the Germans soon turn the tide by deploying machine guns that they had hidden in the nearby forest. The surprise ambush overwhelms the British, leaving only a handful of survivors. Captain Nichols and Major Jamie are also killed, but their horses, Joey and Topthorn, survive. After the battle, a 14-year-old German soldier named Michael is given the responsibility to use the two horses as ambulance wagons for injured soldiers. Joey and Topthorn are then made to relentlessly carry wounded soldiers to a nearby infirmary. After some time, Michael is assigned to the battlefront, while his elder brother Gunther is commanded to stay with the horses for quick assistance. But the latter is extremely worried that his little brother will perish on the front line. The next day, as the German troops start marching, Gunther rides Joey and gives his brother Topthorn, but the two don't head towards their assigned posts and instead run away from the camp. Their goal is to ride to Italy, but they stop for the night to hide in a farm's windmill. This is when their luck runs out, as they are quickly discovered by two German soldiers. They are then executed outside the windmill for deserting the army. The following morning, a young orphan French girl named Emily finds the two horses inside the windmill. She also finds Joey's pennant nearby and takes it for herself. It is then revealed that Emily lives at a nearby farm with her grandfather. One afternoon, German soldiers arrive at the farm and confiscate all food and supplies from their property. Emily quickly hides in her bedroom along with the horses. How do you hide horses in a bedroom? Her grandfather is able to talk them out of trouble, and the soldiers leave without checking the bedroom. Shortly after, Emily has a conversation with her grandfather. Through it, it is revealed that she suffers from a disease that makes her bones fragile, and thus she is not allowed to ride the horses for fear of falling. Nonetheless, Emily's birthday arrives, and the grandfather allows her to ride Joey. She is extremely excited and gallops the horse up the hill adjacent to their farm. This proves to be a dreadful mistake, as she accidentally runs into the German soldiers who ransacked their farm earlier. The old man is thus forced to offer the two horses as a payment for his granddaughter's life, but he does manage to keep Joey's pennant secretly. Following this, Joey and Topthorn, along with other horses, are forced into pulling German heavy artillery. The animals are pushed to their limits, and many of them collapse from exhaustion. They serve in this brutal task under care of the German private Friedrich Hegemann, who loves horses and tries to help them survive, but the captain of the German camp shows no mercy and shoots down the weaker ones. By the year 1918, Albert and his friend Andrew have enlisted in the English army. They are currently embroiled in the Second Battle of the Somme under the command of Mr. Lyons' son, David. There is no love lost between the two. Even on the battlefield, David takes every opportunity to mock Albert, teasing him about his persistent hooting like an owl. But, unbeknownst to him, Albert keeps making that noise in hopes that Joey may somehow hear it and rush back to him. I know it's for the sake of dramatic movie magic, but in what alternate universe would someone at this point actually hold out hope that their horse was just within earshot? One afternoon, a bomb explodes near the English trench and all the soldiers take their positions to respond to possible enemy fire. David soon gives the command and the soldiers charge forward as one single unit. In the chaos and confusion, Albert and David find themselves side by side. They forget their differences momentarily and fight together for their country. Shortly afterwards, Albert manages to take down a German soldier who was holed up in a pillbox with a machine gun. This allows several English soldiers, including Albert and Andrew, to successfully reach the enemy's trenches. Things, however, take a dark turn when a mustard gas bomb explodes right behind Andrew, creating unforeseen devastation. On the other hand, Private Friedrich Hagelmann watches on as German troops begin to retreat to their barracks. He has managed to keep Joey and Topthorne alive throughout several years of hard labor, but with chaos erupting everywhere, Topthorne finally succumbs to exhaustion and dies. Friedrich is then dragged away by other German soldiers, leaving Joey to face an oncoming tank. Eventually, Joey jumps over the tank and runs into no man's land. He gallops through the devastated town of Somme and eventually gets entangled in the barbed wire between the English and German trenches. That night, soldiers from both sides spot the animal from their respective trenches. A British soldier named Colin soon waves a white flag and crosses into the no man's land. A German soldier named Pieter also comes over with wire cutters, and together they free Joey from the barbed wire. The German wants to take the horse on their side, but Colin says, "Me came here first." They eventually decide to toss a coin, and Colin wins, finally bringing Joey safely to his side. Elsewhere, we get to know that Andrew has been killed by the gas attack, but Albert has survived. He is temporarily blinded and has bandages covering his eyes. Albert is recuperating at a British medical camp when he overhears talk about a miraculous horse rescued from no man's land. The army doctor then instructs the camp sergeant, James Fry, to put the horse down because he cannot dedicate medical efforts to an animal at this moment. But when Fry is about to shoot, Joey hears the owl call that he learned as a colt. Suddenly, the camera shifts and we see Albert being led towards Joey. He once again sounds his owl call, and the horse hurries to meet his long-lost friend. Albert, with bandages still covering his eyes, gives an exact description of the horse's body markings. The other soldiers wash away the animal and reveal each marking just as Albert had described. The doctor then assures Albert that they will take care of the horse. You still don't have the money to do that, and people will die because of it, but movie magic, my boy. A few months later, as both Albert and Joey get better, the armistice is declared. The First World War comes to an end, but Albert is hit with bad news. He learns that only officers' horses will be shipped home, while the rest will be sold in an auction. He desperately gathers funds from his fellow soldiers to purchase Joey, but it proves to be a difficult task. On the day of the auction, Albert finds himself losing a bidding war with none other than Emily's grandfather. The old man wants to buy Joey in memory of his granddaughter, who recently passed away. He even announces that should anyone bid against him again, he will sell his farm and increase the bid to £1,000. No other bid is placed, and the grandfather eventually takes ownership of Joey. After the auction, Albert pleads his case with Emily's grandfather, who remains unmoved, but the old man is surprised when the horse chooses to return to Albert as if to say goodbye. This is when the old man shows Albert the military pennant that Emily had found all those years ago. Albert's quick recognition of the pennant convinces the grandfather that Joey is indeed his horse. Thus, he returns Joey to the young man and tells him to take great care of it. Unless, of course, you'd like me to adopt you as my new daughter. As the movie comes to an end, Albert returns with his beloved horse to his family's farm. He hugs his parents and returns the pennant to his father, who is proud that his son has become a man, but somehow not even a little bit surprised by that insane string of coincidences.